What's up, YouTube? I'm here to do my prediction video for UFC Fight Night, Lineker versus Dodson. Right off the bat, some of these guys have really hard last names to say, so I'm just gonna not even try. The first fight is Kelly versus Caitlin Vieira, and Kelly looks alright. I mean, she got beat in her first fight in the UFC by TKO. She looks like a jiu-jitsu person, that's about it. I think they're kind of setting up this fight for Caitlin. I think Caitlin looks like a solid prospect. She's like 6 or 7-0. And she looks like she's really well-rounded, so I just feel like Caitlin's probably going to win by first-round stoppage, maybe second. Next is Cody East versus Curtis Blades. And Curtis looks alright. He's basically a striker. These guys are both basically strikers, but Cody East was that guy from the Dana White Looking for a Fight, and I feel like he looked really good in his debut. I think the problem was he just started to brawl with Walt Harris, and I think he was winning up until he started just winging shots at him. When he was fighting technical, it was super one-sided. It was just once he started brawling with him, he got caught and knocked out. I think when he fights technical, he looks really good, and I think that's what he needs to do. If he fights technical in this fight, I think he'll win by probably first-round knockout. Next is Johnny Bravo Williams versus Ion, hard last name to say. Ion looks like a 205-pound version of Jeremy Stephens, but his takedown defense is nowhere near as good as Jeremy Stephens. As where, Jonathan Williams looked like a really good striker with good takedowns. I just feel like in his last fight he was getting tired and he was forcing takedowns, then he got swept and he couldn't do anything. I think as long as he worked on his conditioning, he'll be fine. I think his striking and his wrestling looks amazing. I think he's probably one of the best prospects at 205 right now. And I think that he should have fixed his problems in his last fight, and he'll probably win by TKO or decision. Jonathan Williams, that is. I think he wins by TKO decision. Next is Nate Marquardt versus Tandem McCrory. And, Tandem got caught in his last fight, but he's looked amazing since he's come back to MMA in general. I think he's gone, like 4-1 with that one loss being to that Polish guy. He just got caught. As where Nate Marquardt, he's basically lost the majority of his last couple fights. I think he's gone 1-3 or 1-4 in his last 5. He just... and he got hurt in that fight against CB. CB just rushed at him, and he caught CB with a big punch. But Nate's just been looking like shit more and more, and Tandem McCrory looked amazing up until that last fight. So it's just one of those things where Tandem McCrory's been looking good, Nate hasn't. I think Tandem will probably either win with striking or get a takedown sooner or later and probably just submit him. Next is Kenta Nakamura versus, I think it's... something Dos Santos. This guy's name is really hard to say, but Kenta looks, I think he's been great since he's come back to the UFC. I think in all 3 of his fights, even the one he lost, he looked good everywhere. His striking's good. His jiu-jitsu's been looking good. And Dos Santos is a good striker, but that's about it. I think that even though he's probably the better striker in this fight, I think Nakamura's got good ways to get this fight to the ground. And Dos Santos is not a great grappler. I think if Kenta can take this down, he'll win by submission. And I do think he'll be able to take it down sooner or later. And this is how I see it. Kenta Nakamura by first or second round submission. Next is Shamal versus Walt Harris. And like I said, to me, Walt Harris is not UFC level. I mean, he won his last fight against Cody East, but he was getting beat most of that fight until he started winging wildly with him and caught him. He's 1-3 in the UFC. I think his record's like 6-3 overall. He's just not amazing. He's just an okay striker, and that's about it, and he gasses. I feel like Shamal is a pretty good wrestler with good striking and decent conditioning. I think as long as he keeps this fight technical and doesn't just straight up brawl with him, then he'll be fine. And even if he does, it's not like Walt Harris is the greatest brawler ever. He's been knocked out a bunch of times. It's just I think he clipped Cody East first. So I just feel like Shamal looks like the better fighter overall, and I think he'll win by TKO sooner or later. Next is Hakron Diaz versus Andre Fili, and Andre Fili to me is just not super well-rounded. I think his striking game is his best aspect, and he's not the greatest striker ever. He's probably a better striker than Hakron is, but I think Hakron can score takedowns if he needs to. And he'll be able to kind of push Andre up against the fence when he needs to as well. So I think he'll probably grind out a 30-27 decision just with his better wrestling. Next is Luis da Silva versus Joachim Christensen. And Christensen is this guy from Denmark. He's 205, and he looks well-rounded, but he just doesn't look amazing anywhere. As where Luis da Silva looks like an amazing striker with really solid jiu-jitsu, and he looked amazing in that fight against Jonathan Wilson. I thought Jonathan Wilson was winning. He just kept forcing takedowns, and Luis da Silva just took advantage of it with his better jiu-jitsu. And I think that Luis da Silva showed me that he's a great striker with really good jiu-jitsu, and he's a really solid prospect, and I think that because he's already fought somebody really good, and because he's got the jitters out of the way, he should be able to beat Christensen, who just looks like he's well-rounded but not amazing. Next is Louis Smolka versus Brandon Miorno. And Brandon is just this kind of Mexican jiu-jitsu guy who's taking this fight on like super short notice. He doesn't look amazing to me. It just looks like he has some pretty solid jiu-jitsu game, but I think Lewis's jiu-jitsu game is better. I think Lewis has fought better people. I think if this fight's standing, Lewis is better. If this fight goes to the ground, I think it's close, but I still think Lewis is the better grappler overall. So I feel like Lewis is going to win by submission or TKO sooner or later in this fight. Next is Josh Berkman versus Zach Ottawa. And Zach looks like a decent jiu-jitsu guy, but just like with Brandon, he's taking this fight on just a few weeks' notice because I don't remember who Josh was supposed to fight, but it was somebody else. You never know, but I just feel like Josh has been training for this fight for a while, and this Zach guy's just coming up on like 3 or 4 weeks' notice, and Josh is just too experienced to lose to some random guy. So I think Josh is going to win by TKO or submission sooner or later. Next is Will Brooks versus Alex Oliveira, and Will Brooks to me is kind of like the 155-pound version of Neil Magny. He doesn't look super impressive to me. I just feel like he's good at keeping a pace and he's good at not getting tired. Aside from that, he doesn't impress me that much. I feel like just like with Neil Magny, once Will starts fighting the really good people, just that style of having a high pace and good conditioning isn't going to work as well against guys that are better than you in general. He's probably better than Alex Oliveira, but I don't know. I just don't feel like Alex Oliveira's ever lost to a guy that was just straight up striking with him. His losses are to guys that took him down and submitted him. I think Alex's striking is super underrated, and I think his jiu-jitsu game is kind of underrated too. So I think this fight could honestly go either way, and I'm leaning towards Alex. I just feel like with Will Brooks, it's the same thing as Neil Magny. I mean, he probably will win this fight, but I'm just going to go with Alex just because Will Brooks doesn't impress me. I mean, he didn't impress me against Ross Pearson, and he probably should have won that fight by TKO, and the fact that it was kind of close at all just shows that he's just okay. So I'm going to pick Alex. I say he wins by TKO or maybe even submission. Finally, the main event, John Lineker versus John Dodson, and Dodson's definitely got a speed advantage. I'd say technique-wise, I'd say it's more hand speed than anything. I don't know if he's necessarily a better striker than John Lineker. I think, the biggest question for me is, can John Dodson fight like how he fights for 5 straight rounds? And I don't think he can. I think that he'll start to slow down sooner or later, and once he does, that's when Lineker will start to hit him. And when Lineker starts to hit him, that's when the fight's going to shift gears and go in his direction. I feel like the first 2 or 3 rounds, Dodson will probably win, but I think sooner or later, Lineker is just going to be able to walk him down and knock him out. Just because I've already seen Dodson can't keep that pace. He pushes a really high pace with his speed, and he doesn't have a lot of one-punch knockout power. I mean, he does have knockouts on his thing, but it's like 50-50. I think for every knockout he has a decision win, and John Lineker's never been knocked out. So I think it's just, can John Lineker get past the first couple rounds, and I think he can. And I think once he does, once Dodson starts to slow down, he'll start catching him, and he'll eventually win by TKO. I'm going to say like 4th round. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.